Welcome to episode 4 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, the great and powerful 21st century Holden Caulfield, and I'm joined today by the illustrious, eminent Simone of the Philippines. How are you doing today, Simone?
I'm fine. Good.
Yeah, is this your first day back from break? First day back to high school?
No, not really. We're on a modular based learning, so it wasn't a problem at all.
Is that because you guys are quarantined over there?
Yeah,
So how do the modules work? Do you just do you stay at home and you learn from home? Everything basically. You take online classes.
there's no online classes. Everything is on the module. You need to study on your own or look for some other materials to be able to do the given task.
So you don't have a
for the
teacher.
week.
You just teach yourself it. Then it's asynchronous. Then
Yeah.
okay, I see. Well, that's good. That's pretty lucky because at least you don't have to you don't have to be anywhere at a certain time. You don't have to get up in the morning at 6 to sit through some bullshit online class or whatever. I hate online learning personally, but that's just me. I think some people thrive at it. I don't know. How do you feel about it? Do you like it, or would you prefer physical in-person classes?
Uh, it's good for the sake that you have to manage your time. You don't have to follow any given timeline to do your task. All you need to do is you have 1 week to do all your tasks, and then do whatever you want. Do anything. You don't have to follow any order. Uh, I don't know. It's difficult for others. They can't cope or study by their own. So I think the in-person class are much way better than this.
Yeah, yeah. Is someone hammering something in the background over there?
Uh, yeah, my grandmother is doing her laundry.
Ah, okay. Do those chickens? Do those always do that? Like the cockadoodle doo thing? Like, do they do that all the time or only in the morning?
It depends on the mood. When when one chicken preaches and they do it for for the next 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Actually, I want to know something real quick. Why do you think they do that?
Maybe animal instinct. I don't know if it's they calling each other or something,
Huh.
or conveying some message.
I just Googled it. It says roosters crow in the mornings because their internal clock tells them to. New research suggests. The rooster's morning cock-a-doodle-doo is driven by an internal clock, finds new research, suggesting the male chickens really know the time of day. I guess they don't really know, but that's fine. Anyway, I'm stalling. I'm stalling because I don't really know what to say about this movie we just watched. It was the Taming of the Shrew. It was part of the 2006 BBC series Shakespeare Retold, where they basically modernized a bunch of old classic, Shakespeare plays. Shakespeare's Shakespeare, everyone knows him. Um, what are your thoughts, Simone? Before we get into ratings, just run through, how you felt about it. Give me some initial, I guess, just impressions. I suppose impressions.
Uh, to be honest, I don't have any thoughts about it. Uh, uh, it's just like I just chose the movie itself, but I mean that the movie is and just I don't know. I don't know what should I say about this movie.
It's actually a 2005 series, by the way. I said 2006. My apologies for that. Yeah. On it, I would have to say I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10, just right off the bat. I think it was entertaining. I think it was a nice, neat. It was a neat little, romantic comedy or whatever. But it didn't really feel like Shakespeare to me, and I think the main reason for that was because it lacked the language. I think a big part of Shakespeare is the language, the all the wordplay, all the complexities of language, and I think you need it to be more theatrical for that. That's why they're plays. You need a play because a play relies much more heavily upon dialogue and character interaction through dialogue and speech, because that's really all there is. It's just a stage and stage actors, and the stage actors, they have to, and so the dialogue has to be good. The language has to be interesting. It has to be complex. And so I think when you remove that, when you take that element away, you don't really get Shakespeare. You get this diluted. It's entertaining. For a typical like late '90s, early 2000s romantic comedy. It's pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. It was easy to watch, but at the same time, it's not Shakespeare. And I came into it, and it's called Shakespeare Retold. So you come into it with the I guess the assumption that it's going to be Shakespeare, and it doesn't really seem that way to me. It doesn't. It's missing a lot of that oomph. There's nothing really there's not a lot of deep underlying significance or whatever. There's nothing to really. It's not the kind of movie that raises questions about interesting questions about human nature and human relationships, human interactions. I guess it kind of does, but this adaptation doesn't. So from an adaptation perspective, I would have to give it a 6.5 out of 10. On its own merits, if it was its own work without any connection to Shakespeare at all, I'd give it a 7, It's a pretty average romantic comedy, but from a Shakespeare point of view, it's either a 6 or a 6.5. What do you think, Simone?
Yeah. I think it's just for entertainment at all. There's no any touch of Shakespeare at any point for me. Because in the first part, it tells that it's adaptation from some Shakespeare from Shakespeare works or something. Just like I said, there's no significance at all about it. I can't see. I don't know, but they give it their own perspective or their message where they want to for the sake of entertainment. So I think I'll give it a 6. Given that if you're going to look at it that it was an adaptation of some Shakespeare's work, but for the whole sake of entertainment, I think I'd give it a 7.5.
7.5. Okay, interesting. We're gonna get into so this play actually has a lot of controversy surrounding it, and we're gonna get into that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about, I guess, the actual movie itself, because we did watch the adaptation. I'm not overly familiar with the original play. I'll just say that. So keep that in mind when I espouse my opinion, I suppose. But I wanted to talk more about the actual adaptation itself first. From let's say I guess a structural or production perspective, I guess, just that aspect of the movie, that aspect of it was all right, I'd say. There was a lot of that early 2000s like orange filter, though. It made it kind of hard to see at times. It was a little blurry. I don't know why they did that so much back in the day. Like if you watch like the early seasons of shows like House or even like Mad Men, they have a lot of they saturate it too much, the film, and it kind of makes it just makes it hard to see, and it's like kind of pointless. I don't know why that was cool at all, like at any point, but I don't know. It's a weird stylistic choice, but it's something that belongs to the era more so than it does to the individual film itself. So I guess I can't really give it a hard time for that. But still, it makes it kind of hard to see. Like I said, there were also scenes where I couldn't really understand what people were saying. I think the sound mixing was off at some parts, like during the cafe scene when they were at the Frying Squad cafe, and that was the character. Those were the characters of. It was the Earl, who doesn't really have a name outside of his title. He's just called the Earl, and there's something significant about that, which we'll get into in a little bit. But then there's also Harry, who is Bianca's manager. Bianca was the model. We'll get into a synopsis in a second, but I just wanted to say this one thing because it's not really that important, but. During that scene, the chairs in the background were louder than the actual dialogue, and that kind of bugged me a little bit. And also, it seems like the actors kind of mutter their lines a lot. That seems to be a thing with a lot of Brits. I don't know why they mutter their lines when they act. Did you notice anything like that, Simone? I kind of had a few problems with it here and there.
I'm having problems, especially the subtitle is not accurate with what they're saying.
Oh,
I
were
don't
they
know what they're
the
saying most of the times.
were those the
It's like,
auto-generated subtitles by YouTube?
yeah, it wasn't accurate at all. I think it's only 25% of it are accurate to what they're saying. So
Damn.
I didn't understand what they're saying at some points, but I'll just base on facial expressions or what is it all about the scene, or I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, you got to look for context clues, as they say. Uh, so it had a pretty good cast. I will say that much. It had Mark from Peep Show, if you've ever seen that. It's pretty good. And it also had Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter. She played Catherine, who was the crazy, you know, workaholic MP. And an MP is a member of Parliament, if you don't know. Basically, like I guess the UK equivalent of a congresswoman, let's say, or a member of well the Senate, senator, or a U.S. House, whatever, you know what I mean, representative, that high government, So I guess basic summary plot. You've got Catherine Minola, who is played by the actress who played Moaning Myrtle. She's a crazy workaholic member of parliament. She has a secretary who's named Tim, who is played by the guy who plays Mark from Peep Show. Um, and then there's some Italian guy who I thought was going to be a more important character. I thought he was going to be going to play a major role, but he doesn't. He's just some Italian guy with glasses Bianca, who's this model, Bianca Manola, who is Catherine's sister. They're like polar opposites. Catherine's like a workaholic and irresponsible, a responsible workaholic, neurotic, while Bianca is more just fashionable, just kind of, doesn't care about anything, and just neither of them want to get married necessarily. Um, that's one thing they have in common. And so it seems to be the case with their mother as well. All three of them are kind of, they're independent women. And yeah, they kind of just, you know, they're all kind of in the same boat there. But she's not really in the movie a lot either, is she? I mean, she kind of just. I thought she was going to be more important based on the opening scenes. She pays for the Italian guy, like she pays for his seat classing. She upgrades him to like first class so he can sit next to her. But then she dumps her boyfriend, who is also her manager, and that guy is Harry. Um, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. The movie didn't really go as I expected it to. I thought I thought it would focus more on the sisters, but Bianca wasn't really in it that much. Not after it wasn't even. I wouldn't even call that beginning the first act. She was like just in the opening, and that's it. Like she really all she does in the film is serve to. I guess her leaving. What's his name? God, her leaving her manager, who is also named God, whatever the fuck his name is. They don't really. It's not a big like name kind of movie, so it's I don't know. I have it pulled up. I just can't find it for some reason. But I just said it. But that guy, yeah, the manager guy. She's only in the movie so that the manager can tell his friend the Earl that her sister is single, and then that's how they get together. And then the rest of the movie is just about the Earl and Catherine and their kind of crazy relationship. And it's all high comedy. They're all caricatures, but it does have a lot to say about. I think it does have a lot to say about human nature and human interactions and relationships and everything. It pokes fun at both genders. I think men and women are made fun of equally here. The movie really does. It points out their foibles, the foibles in their personalities, kind of the weird idiosyncrasies of male-female relations. But again, like I said, the adaptation kind of waters it down a little bit, so you kind of have to. I don't know. You kind of it's kind of it almost feels like a stretch to look into it a little more deeply than you would just a typical movie. but it's Shakespeare. At the same time, it's Shakespeare, so you should probably, right? Um, the characters are all a bit bizarre. Like I said, they are high comedy. They are caricatures, and they're all deeply flawed. And if the movie was taken differently, by the way, if the movie was approached by explored from a different perspective, it would actually be pretty depressing because all the characters are, I don't know, all the main cast are kind of hopeless in a way. Harry, for example, is pathetic and only defines himself by his love for Bianca. Bianca, meanwhile, is selfish and immature and doesn't seem to give a shit about anything or anyone but herself. She's very egocentric, very arrogant. Catherine, on the other hand, is deeply self-conscious and afraid to let others in, and so that's why she acts so insane. Uh, and then the Earl is a misfit with borderline personality disorder, it seems, who comes from a dead family. You know, he's rich. He's not even rich anymore. He wasted all of his money. His mom left the family at a young age. His dad's dead. You know, he doesn't have any friends except the only friend he has. By the way, if you noticed in the wedding scene, the only person who comes from his side is is Harry. You know, that's like his only friend. So yeah, they're all sort of they're all kind of unstable, you know. And I think the point that the movie is trying to make, which some would argue is sexist, and we'll get into that in a little bit because that really is kind of at the crux of this whole thing. But the movie, I think what the movie's message is, what it's trying to say is that people need to be there for each other. You know, it's as simple as that. People are not perfect. People are flawed. We are only human, you know. And what the movie's trying to say is that we need to prioritize coming together and helping each other out and being collaborators as opposed to whatever the opposite of that may be, loners. I don't know. No man is an island, essentially. You know, men need women and women need men, and it's really as simple as that. People need each other to get through. And I guess you could definitely extend that outwards to, you know, same-sex relations and everything. It's not exclusive, I wouldn't say. But yeah, because it is a 2000s like TV film. I mean, there are a lot of like I did notice there were a lot of gay jokes and stuff. Let me just say this now: this movie would not be able to get made in today. You know, in 2021, it would not be able. It would not get through the heavily politicized censors. But and that kind of sucks too. It's depressing because you know what? It's a comedy. It's comedy, and I think the reason why it is somewhat provocative is to show people that they need to kind of, you know, lighten up a little bit, and that life can actually be a lot funnier than people give it credit for. You know, that seems to be the moral of the story with this one, and that seems to be what Shakespeare's trying to do. You know, he's trying to, and again, you know, this is an adaptation, so I don't know how far away this is from the original source material. It seems pretty far, I would say. I think, but I still think it does capture that main thing, the kernel of truth at the crux of the story. I think they did a good job of keeping that in, at least. You know, I think in a way the movie and the play, they seem like they're supposed to make you a little uncomfortable. You know, they're provocative because they seek to pull the stick out of the audience's ass, let's say. Is there anything you want to comment on about that there, Simone?
You already said, but you made me realize about something. I don't know. I didn't focus much on the movie. It was trying to say. I guess it's too typical.
What do you mean by too typical? You mean too conventional?
I think given that it's a comedy, so it touches more on the comedy part.
Do you think comedy isn't as I don't know, I guess deep or insightful or significant or artistically effective as drama?
Oh yeah, it is. For example, you say you add, it could be depressing, but they take it in a different level, so a different way. So it's great.
But would you have liked it better if it was a drama? If they played it more seriously?
Maybe if a different cast would fit if it's going to be a drama.
Did you like the cast for this one?
Yeah, they really fit into their character because it's a comedy, so they did a great job.
and because it's a comedy, did you think it was funny? Did you laugh while watching it?
At some parts, but some scenes are too. When you see it from the start, you might laugh, but as the film goes by, you already expected that same thing would happen.
So you predicted the typical I guess I don't know like the steps, I guess, the steps of like a typical comedy. Like here, 30 minutes in, this is going to happen. 45 minutes in, this is going to happen. The structure, you predicted that because it's so typical, it's so conventional. You think, in your opinion, is that what you're saying?
Somehow, but not really. I don't know. I'm confused about these things.
No, but what you're saying is that you think it's. Are you saying that you would consider this to be, or this adaptation anyway, not necessarily the original play, but this adaptation of Taming the Shrew? Would you say that it's a largely a by the numbers romantic comedy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with you that more on romantic comedy.
Well,
Correct.
that's not necessarily my opinion, but is that what you're saying? I just want you to make clear to the audience what your perspective is, so that they know.
So it's a romantic comedy, but it focuses more on the comedic part, the comedy, rather than the. I think there's not as much point about the romantic comedy because most part of the films before she get married, it just focus on her work being workaholic, I guess.
So you don't think there's enough emphasis on the actual romance between her and the Earl?
Uh, mm, just right. I think they did it just right. Not too romantic comedy, not too, just right. I mean,
So you think it's balanced?
yeah, 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 yeah.
But like 2 seconds ago, you just said that they focus more on the comedy than they do the romantic aspect of the romantic comedy. So which one is it?
Sorry, I'm being confusing you people. Uh, uh,
Be honest. Be honest. Don't just agree with me on everything. Have your own opinion. Go ahead.
um, just it's not much. It has a romantic comedy aspect, but I didn't see it that much about romantic comedy. It it plays more on the comedy part about being them in a relationship. It not so much a more romantic. I guess it's more in comedy.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you on that. So there, I'm agreeing with you, but yeah, no, it definitely is. Real quick, I just let's. So before we get into like the big meat and potatoes of this episode, I just want to cover all the other basic things, get them out of the way before we cover the more serious stuff. Not, I mean, not necessarily serious, but it might be a little more controversial. So I want to push it to the end, to keep you all enthralled, I suppose, as well. But I wrote down some quotes, I guess, that I thought were funny. There was one exchange of dialogue between the Earl and Harry that I thought was kind of amusing. I laughed at this, so that's why I wrote it down. I think it was, oh yeah, yeah. The Earl says, "You've got to deal with it like you deal with a woman," and Harry says, "What? By kicking it in the balls?" I thought that was a little funny. I don't know why. It made me crack up a little bit. Shakespeare's known for some lowbrow humor, by the way. Even though he does a lot of high comedy, he does make a lot of, and for someone of like the 1500s too, he tells a lot of sex jokes and stuff. Like he isn't that is actually true to the original play and the original man behind the original play. So I thought that was a nice touch. I also thought it was funny when they were in the park. Catherine and the Earl were in the park, meeting up for kind of the first real time after the elevator scene. Uh, she asks him, "Are you stalking me?" And then he says, "No, but I'd like to." And I just thought that was a perfect crystallization of both their personalities. Well, more I guess his personality, the 16th Earl of Charlby, who is only referred to by his title. Um, he's just crazy eccentric, who's kind of manic depressive, kind of borderline personality disorder. Again, he seems to have this weird kind of vague tragedy that he's trying to that's behind him at all times, and it explains a lot. It does account for a lot of his behavior. For example, when he dresses up like Robert Smith from The Cure for his own wedding, he's got the kilt on and the painted nails and everything. And it's just, and then everything else he does too. Throws the woman's suitcase or throws Catherine's suitcase in the pool, and just all the just he's a ridiculous character. He's ridiculous, and so that we're gonna get into the controversy in a second. I keep saying that, but it's just. I don't understand how people could see this see any kind of controversy in this. I mean, the characters are so ridiculous. These aren't real people, and that's the thing about art too, because this got me thinking about art a little bit. It did, even a movie like this, which is watered down Shakespeare, it got me thinking about what art is, what the purpose of art is, what the merits of art is, what the traits of art is. I guess what are traits of art are. What is the motive? And I think what it comes down to is that art dispenses vague subjective wisdom. The artist is they're just another person. They're just a human being, and the smart artist knows that, and are either completely transparent with about their subjectivity. They let it lay right there on the surface for everyone to see. Either that, or they only handle the general, more broad-spanning truths, so to speak. And I think a lot of and again, like I said earlier, the truths in this one are that people need each other, that men and women were made to depend on one another, unless you're gay or whatever, But people are made to depend on each other. Even more. Let's get even more broad about it. People need to depend on each other. Relationships are important because they can be codependent. It's this matter of mutual dependence, I'd say. I think everyone depends on someone. No man is an island, like they say. No one can really make it on their own. And if they can, well, it's not fun. It's not enjoyable to go through life all by yourself. Solitude is not necessarily a bad thing, because there's a difference between isolation and solitude and loneliness. They're all different things. But I don't think this movie is, and I don't think the message is anti-solitude or anything, or anti-independence. It's just, it's there to remind people that we're all in this together. I think, we're all part of one species, and we've only got so much time in the universe. One day the sun's gonna blow us the fuck up, unless we develop some advanced form of space travel and move to another galaxy or something. The universe is gonna end one day. And that's the implication anyway, So I think the movie is more just to remind us all to relax sometimes and sit down and have a laugh, And I think that's a big part of Shakespeare. It's not all of Shakespeare, definitely not. No, to say that would be a gross oversimplification. But I think at his core, as a playwright, as an entertainer, as an artist, he reminds us all that, and that's why he's so enduring. That's why people still talk about him today. That's why he didn't get left behind in the 16th century, because he reminds us all. We need that. We need to be reminded to get the stick out of our asses every now and then. What do you think of that, Simone?
Yeah, it's okay. I always am agreeing with you, RTS.
Do you have anything else to add to that, though?
I agree with you that it's not anti solitude or something. It's just I just tell about its perspective about reminding us people about that we need each other, that we are no man is an island, just like you say that.
Yeah.
We are codependent to each other.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we can change that back.
I liked the quote they said about the Earl. By the way, this was Harry. He was talking about him. He said that he isn't a grown up, and he never will be. He's only about 6, bless him. He thinks the world about you in his own strange way, and that's Harry talking about Earl and how he feels about Catherine. And I think that quote kind of sums up the entire thing, and I liked it, and that's why I wrote it down. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just I've been dreading this, but let's take a look at the controversy. So I have Or well, you know what? Before that, let me just ask you some. We'll do the I guess not the Q&A, but I'll grill you about a few things. These are the questions that came up while I was watching. Do you think should everyone get married in their lifetime, Simone?
Uh, it depends upon you. I don't know. There's no such perfect time to get married, but it depends. I don't know. It could be okay because if you believe that we need to be dependent on each other, but marriage could be a great thing about. It depends upon your perspective, I think.
Do you think well, not just marriage, but just having a girlfriend, having a longtime partner? Do you think everyone should at least have that once, maybe in their lives? Or do you think it's okay to just kind of go through life from birth to death, just from the cradle to the grave, just not really, just by yourself, I guess, just asexual, aromantic, maybe not necessarily that, but just, being a lifelong bachelor, like a lot of, there are a lot of famous people who were like that, scientists and politicians and such. What do you think? James Monroe, the 15th president before Abraham Lincoln is a United States president, was a notable example. But what do you think of the lifelong bachelor?
Uh, I think I think it's not an issue whether you experience having a girlfriend once in your life. I think it's important to depend to one time of your life to depends on someone. I think to articulate more about yourself, to know more about it. I think. You can just see yourself by your own or analyze things by yourself. I think you need the help of other people to build more your character, I guess.
But don't you think it's immature not to even try to date or whatever? Do you think it's a mark of just like emotional insecurity, perhaps? I don't actually believe this. I'm just arguing. I'm taking the devil's advocate kind of perspective here.
It still depends. I mean, there are people that find just being on their own as a great company. I think they enjoy, for example, their introvert. It doesn't mean that introversion is bad. That uh, spending more time about yourself or enjoying your own company, or maybe uh, they can only depend on the relationship. Maybe they have friends or other people they can rely on. So it depends really.
Uh, and then what are some good reasons for getting married?
Uh, People and for example, society think that you can only have the best time of your life when you get married. I think that's they think that it's life, but they it give you a sense of being a normal human being because it's the norm. It's a norm, but it still depends on how you enjoy life or what are the things that you're doing to enjoy your life. It's one way to enjoy your life. That's it.
Is it like that in the Philippines? Is there a lot of social pressure to get married?
Yeah, I guess especially on reunions. I guess.
Oh, like class reunions and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's not common here to be single.
Oh, is it? No, I don't think it's
It's
really common anywhere, honestly. So that's interesting, though.
uh, not common here. So, but it doesn't degrade the people if they're not if they don't get married. Maybe
Right.
because people that didn't get into marriage are somewhat religious thing. So
Yeah,
it wasn't a problem.
I tend to take, a laissez-faire kind of. I don't necessarily want to say libertarian, but just a vaguely libertarian view of just, live and let live. I mean, what people do in their spare time isn't really any of my business. As long as it isn't hurting anybody else, I really couldn't care the fuck less. And I'm not a deeply religious person, but I don't think there's anything wrong with religion. I don't think there's anything wrong with, homosexuality or anything like that. No, just a disclaimer. It's like I don't really care what other people do. So on the same token, I wouldn't really care about whether people get married or not. It's like, yeah, I want to get married eventually one day, sure, because I don't know, it's just kind of how it is. But like, yeah, I don't know. Just what about you? Do you want to get married?
Of course, everyone wants to get married.
Well, not necessarily everyone. That is the conversation. But
uh,
yeah,
I know that's it's just my personal choice, I guess.
yeah, yeah. That is what it is. It is one of the most personal choices a person can make. And then on the other side of that, what are some bad reasons for getting married? Do you think?
Um, maybe maybe you get your girlfriend pregnant, and then the family is religious, and then you're pushed through marriage.
So
I think
like
that's
a shotgun wedding.
yeah, I guess. For example, when the girl is from a conservative family, you need to marry her, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the controversy now. Really don't want to talk about this, but it is at the crux of the story, so we kind of have to. For this, I'm just gonna read. I will just read the Wikipedia article for it, and then we'll talk about it at certain points. But this is the sexism controversy of the Taming of the Shrew. Keep in mind, by the way, that the play was written sometime between the years of 1590 and 1592, so it's a bit weird to try to compare the way things were back then to the way things are now. But that's not the only problem with this whole debate. But let's just get into it. So, the Taming of the Shrew has been the subject of critical controversy. Dana Aspinall writes that since its first appearance, sometime between 1588 and 1594, Shrew has elicited a panoply of heartily supportive, ethically uneasy, or altogether disgusted responses to its rough and tumble treatment of the taming of the cursed shrew, Katharina, or Catherine in the movie. And obviously, of all potentially unruly wives, Phyllis Racken, on the other hand, argues that, seen in the context of current anxieties, desires, and beliefs, Shakespeare's play seems to prefigure the most oppressive modern assumptions about women and to validate those assumptions as timeless truths. Stevie Days says that responses to Shrew have been dominated by feelings of unease and embarrassment, accompanied by the desire to prove that Shakespeare cannot have meant what he seems to be saying, rather, and that therefore he cannot really be saying it. Philippa Kelly asks, do we simply add our voices to those of critical disapproval, seeing Shrew as at best an early Shakespeare, the socially provocative effort of a dramatist who is learning to flex his muscles, or as an item of social archaeology that we have long ago abandoned? Or do we rescue it, quote unquote, from offensive male smugness, or make an appeal to the slippery category of irony? And before I continue, I just want to say that a lot of these people's arguments and stuff, it kind of, to me, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you can feel free to argue it or take it with a grain of salt all the live long day, but I think that it really does these opinions and the people, the way, how uncomfortable it makes people. I think that that's the point. You know what I mean? I think that that's a testament to Shakespeare, to what Shakespeare was trying to do with this. Because look at how many, look how hot and bothered people get. Look how hot under the collar everyone gets about this. They can't laugh at themselves, you know? People need to learn how to laugh at themselves. And that's exactly what the movie is trying to do. That's exactly what the play was trying to do, you know? Show us the human comedy. Because the humanity is ridiculous a lot of the time. Human nature is baffling. You know, there are so many foibles, so many shortcomings we have. You know, instead of moping around about them, instead of demonizing them, instead of being a pain in the ass about everything and going, oh no, you should be better. You know, yeah, you should be, but you should also be able to laugh at it. You know, the only way we're gonna move on advance as a race or a civilization or whatever, I guess a global civilization, I suppose. It just whatever as one species is to laugh at ourselves. If you can't laugh at yourself, then you're kind of you're kind of insecure. You know, you got a lot going on. You got a lot of issues. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think, Simone?
I don't know. I still agree with you that I don't know that life's miserable. So maybe we shouldn't focus about it. Maybe we should laugh at least once in the day or something to brighten up I mean, you can be depressive or depressed for whatever is happening in your life, but maybe you should consider smiling or laughing at what's happening in your life to make things a little bit comfortable.
Well, yeah, and that's part of it, but it's also it's not only an issue of happiness and unhappiness. That is definitely part of it, but it's more so I guess a pride thing. People need to be taught a little humility. They do, men, women, everybody, adults, children. Everyone needs to check themselves every once in a while. If you take yourself too seriously, you get an ego about you. You get unhappy in a very specific way, in a way that I can't necessarily articulate off the bat right now. But I think it's good to be humble. I think everyone should be humbled too, and it definitely this applies to everyone, not necessarily just women, not necessarily just men or children or whoever. It's not specific to one demographic, one group. It's a universal thing. We're all in this together. We all need to check one another every once in a while. That's why the United States, the government. That's why people liked it. Especially back in the day. The structure of it anyway, not necessarily the people working in it, but the theoretical aspect of it, I suppose, the concept, the three branches of government. That's why so many other governments copy that model now. They all follow that model these days. A lot of them do. Where it's this issue, this system of checks and balances. The executive cannot supersede the judicial or the legislative, and vice versa for all of them. Any possible number of combinations. If the U.S. the president has to get through the Congress and the Senate. And it's just they are all, in theory anyway, they're all there to make sure that one element doesn't get out of hand. Two are there to check the other, and so forth, so on and so forth. And I think that applies to this as well. Men and women are they're there to check each other. One isn't better than the other. It's a matter of collaboration. It's a matter of mutual codependence. And that's true in all relationships of all varieties. And yeah, that's kind of the point. That's why people get into relationships, to better themselves, to be happier. It's a big thing to improve their character or whatever. It's all part of it, to become whole, to become one, I suppose. That's how they should get married anyway. I mean, and then, people get married for money, people get married for status, people get married for, reputation because someone tells them to. People get married for, a lot of bad reasons as well, but the good reason is to become one, I guess, to become whole, to become greater than the sum of your parts, I suppose. And I think that's kind of what underlies this play, is that, men and women, when put together, they become better than the sum of their parts. A romantic couple is neither male nor female. It's something greater. It's something that you can't even necessarily define because we don't understand enough about it to really say much, because it's almost too pure, and Shakespeare, at least in Shakespeare's opinion, that's his view, is that it's, romance and true love is reverent. You should treat it with reverence, but and then you should poke fun at bad impressions of it, or bad, faulty, I don't even know, mimicries or just failed versions of it, and that's what underlies a lot of his romantic comedies, because this guy made a lot of romantic comedies, One could say he is the pioneer of the romantic comedy, as a matter of fact, among a lot of other things, obviously. But yeah, that's definitely part of his au revoir, oeuvre. But yeah, it's part of his canon. That's part of his work. That's part of who he is as an artist. And it's an interesting element, and it's one that apparently has sparked a lot of controversy. So let's proceed with the controversy. Let's get a little more into it. Where was I? Oh, right here. Okay, so some scholars argue that even in Shakespeare's day, the play must have been controversial due to the changing nature of gender politics. Marjorie Garber, for example, suggests that Shakespeare created the induction so the audience wouldn't react badly to the misogyny in the Petruchio / Katharina story, and I'm assuming that the induction is some sort of prologue to the play, some sort of disclaimer, And that's what this Garber woman is arguing. Shakespeare was, in effect, defending himself against charges of sexism. G.R. Hibbard argues that during the period in which the play was written, arranged marriages were beginning to give way to newer, more romantically informed unions, and thus people's views on women's position in society and their relationships with men were in a state of flux. As they always are. As such, audiences may not have been as predisposed to tolerate the harsh treatment of Katharina as is often thought. Evidence of at least some initial societal discomfort with the shrew is perhaps to be found in the fact that John Fletcher, Shakespeare's successor as house playwright for the King's Men, which is, it must be some sort of, it's an acting company that was there in the day, wrote The Woman's Prize or The Tamer Tamed as a sequel to Shakespeare's play. Written circa 1611, the play tells the story of Petruchio's remarriage after Katharina's death. And I'm assuming that Petruchio is he's the Earl in the modernization. So he's the sixth Earl of Charleby in the 2006 remake BBC Shakespeare Retold adaptation. In a mirror of the original play, this is for The Tamer Tamed, his new wife attempts successfully to tame him, thus the tamer becomes the tamed. So it's a role reversal, it's a gender reversal. Although Fletcher's sequel is often downplayed as merely a farce, some critics acknowledge the more serious implications of such a reaction. Linda Boos, for example, writes, Fletcher's response may in itself reflect the kind of discomfort that Shrew has characteristically provoked in men, and why its many revisions since 1594 have repeatedly contrived ways of softening the edges. With the rise of the feminist movement in the 20th century, reactions to the play have tended to become more divergent. For some critics, Kate's taming was no longer as funny as it had been. Her domination became, in George Bernard Shaw's words, George Bernard Shaw was an Irish playwright, by the way, pretty influential, altogether disgusting to modern sensibility. Addressing the relationship between a shrew and the shrew from a political perspective, for example, Leah S. Marcus very much believes the play to be what it seems. She argues a shrew is an earlier version of the shrew, but acknowledges that most scholars reject the idea that a shrew was written by Shakespeare. She believes one of the reasons for this is because a shrew hedges the play's patriarchal message, with numerous qualifiers that do not exist in the shrew. And if you don't know what the patriarchy is, it's essentially this political notion that the world's been ruled by men, and and there's plenty of objective, yes, it's true, but they kind of politicize it and they twist it in a way that isn't necessarily universal. It's a complicated issue, but essentially what's happened these days, and you can agree with this or not. This is just my opinion. This is just my view of it. But that word patriarchy and other such similar language gets heaped around, gets tossed around all the time these days, and it's biased. I think it's biased. I think the approach is wrong. Just because there was a lot of injustice and harshness in the past, it doesn't mean that we need to dredge it up nowadays and commit more acts of cruelty and and whatever, and prejudice and whatnot for the opposite side. It's just, I understand that there's a lot of bitterness and whatnot surrounding certain things, racial, gender issues, but this is a bad response to it. It's like if you have an abusive father and then you grow up and then you have kids and then you beat them twice as much as your dad beat you. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's a poor reaction, I think. I think it's a little vindictive. It's a little resentful. It's a little bitter. I think it's the wrong response. I think you should do the, I guess the vaguely moral thing, moral in the loosest sense of the term. But this is how I think. I think you should rise above it. I think you should get over it. I think, honestly, I think forgiveness is more powerful than resentment, and I think it's liberating. I think once you forgive someone, you forgive someone or something, you're free of that thing or person, and you can move on with your life, and you can be the stronger person, and you can be well adjusted, and you can be happy, and so on and so forth. It opens the door for all kinds of things. But anyway, let's continue reading more about this controversy. Where was I? she argues that, or she believes, this is Leah S. Marcus, by the way. She believes one of the reasons for this is because a Shrew hedges the play's patriarchal message with numerous qualifiers that do not exist in the Shrew. And I guess for this, they're talking more about an earlier version of the play called A Shrew as opposed to The Taming of the Shrew. But anyway, that's not really, it doesn't matter as much. It kind of explains itself in this. She calls the Shrew a more progressive text than she calls a Shrew a more progressive, quote unquote, text than the Shrew, and argues that scholars tend to dismiss the idea that a Shrew is Shakespearean because the women are not are satisfactorily tamed as they are in the Shrew. She also points out that if a Shrew is an early draft, it suggests that Shakespeare may have increased rather than decreased the patriarchal violence of his materials, something which she believes scholars find difficult to accept. However, others see the play as an example of a pro-feminist condemnation of patriarchal domination and an argument for modern-day women's lib. For example, Connell Morrison, director of the RSCs, and the RSC, if you don't know, is it's short for the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is a major British theatre company based in Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire, England, and they do a bunch of Shakespeare, and they're kind of like the premier Shakespeare, they're like the mainstream Shakespeare people, But anyway, Connell Morrison, who directed the quote-unquote relentlessly unpleasant 2008 production of The Taming of the Shrew, writes that I find it gobsmacking that some people see the play as misogynistic. I believe that it is a moral tale. I believe that it is saying, do not be like this and do not do this. These people are objectionable. By the time you get to the last scene, all of the men, including her father, are saying, it's amazing how you crushed that person. It's amazing how you lobotomized her. I'm not going to do the accent anymore. And they're betting on the women as though they are dogs in a race or horses. It's reduced to that. And it's all about money and the level of power. Have you managed to crush Katharina, or for Hortensio or Lucentio, will you be able to control Bianca and the widow? Will you and I'm assuming that Hortensio and Lucentio are, what are their goddamn names? See, they picked a bunch of, that's another problem with the adaptation too, they didn't even use the original names. It's like, if you're gonna do Shakespeare, do it, commit. Go all the way, don't pussyfoot it, Don't water it down to the point where I can't even recognize, it's not even recognizable. You kept some names, but you didn't keep others. I just don't really get why. But I'm assuming that that's supposed to be, Bianca was, I think Hortensio is the Italian guy who barely has a part. So that was the Italian guy with the glasses, the 19-year-old whose dad didn't want him to marry Bianca because she's rich and that's not really a job to be like a stay-at-home husband or whatever. More gender role shit. And then Lucentio was, I'm assuming he is Harry, who is the manager who marries the widow who is Bianca's mother at the very end. Back to this quote. Will you similarly be able to control your proto-shrews? It is so self-evidently repellent that I don't believe for a second that Shakespeare is espousing this. No, I don't think so either. I think that's another part of it too. It's kind of it's not necessarily a cautionary tale, but it is a moral tale, and it has to do with people need to. And again, if it's a corruption of a proper relationship, I don't know about the original play, and I probably should have familiarized myself with it a little more before I came into this. I apologize. That's on me for being ill-prepared. But for this movie anyway, the people are, they're kind of freaks. They're kind of weird. They're kind of eccentric, all of them. All of them. And they need to come together. They need to come together, and they need to come together in the right way. It's common sense stuff. I don't know. It's common sense. You need to have a healthy relationship where people, there is no power dynamic or whatever. I mean, there was literally a quote from the film at the end where it says, where Catherine says that the Earl, he wouldn't expect anything from me that I wouldn't expect from him. It's very egalitarian, 50-50, give or take, give and take rather. It's not about one person being, more dominant than the other or anything like that. Men and women are different. They do different things. We accomplish different things. And people are different, by the way. It's like you shouldn't define yourself by everything. You're your own person. You know what I mean? You can self-determinate. Self-determination is the most important thing anyone can do, any of us can do. But yeah, I don't believe for a second that the man who would be interested in Benedict and Cleopatra and Romeo and Juliet and all these strong lovers would have some misogynist aberration. I don't think so either. It's very obviously a satire on this male behavior and a cautionary tale. That's not how he views women and relationships, as demonstrated by the rest of the plays. This is him investigating misogyny, exploring it, and animating it, and obviously damning it because none of the men come out smelling of roses. When the chips are down, they all default to power positions and self-protection and status, and the one woman who is a challenge to them, with her wit and intellect, they are all gleeful and relieved to see crushed. And that's the original play, which, from what I can tell, seems a lot harsher than this, watered down romantic comedy, early 2000s romantic comedy. But yeah, I mean, even still, it pokes as much fun at the guys as it does the girls. So I really don't see any problem with it at all. And just remember, if you need proof, look at Harry. I mean, he's so pathetically obsessed with Bianca for the majority of the film that he can't even, he's like literally defined by her. He's her manager. He's Bianca's manager. He is, and same with the secretary as well, Tim, who was played by Mark from Peep Show. That guy, he's in a lower position of power to her. It doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't really matter. People are people. There are plenty of women who could kick my ass. There are plenty of, I don't know. Just you know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like this shit's fucking stupid as fuck. It is. It's a half truth. People are just looking for this shit, man. They're looking for things that will fit their political narrative or whatever. They want to look at the world from that lens, and that's bullshit. And that's what I don't like about politics. It's literally you are literally what are you doing? You are limiting yourself. You are intentionally you are deliberately going out of your way to limit the amount of insight you can gain from the world because you are rejecting certain kinds of wisdom. You're keeping yourself closed-minded on purpose. You're doing it because you think that the world, that all the problems of life and all the different situations, that you'll encounter as a human being, as a working adult, let's say, can be solved under one particular banner, under one particular ideology, that there's some catch-all solution to everything, and there isn't, Again, I've said this before, capitalism isn't perfect, communism isn't perfect, nothing, no one system is going to save everything, no one system is going to do everything, and you shouldn't expect that, you shouldn't want it to, you shouldn't want the system to do everything for you, you should do everything for you, the individual should be able to, handle themselves, and that's why a lot of people, that's what I like about the United States, is that it's a place where you have the opportunities. It provides you the resources to be a better person, but whether you take them or not, it's entirely up to you, But it's good to have the possibility, as opposed to being in line for, fucking soup and bread, in Soviet era Russia, for example, where if you say anything derogatory about, Stalin, you get your head chopped off, the secret police come and take you away and you're never seen again. I think, I think the U.S. is a lot better compared to that. It's not perfect. No place is perfect. But, it lets the individual become a better version of themselves, it gives people what they need in order to be better. And I think that is more important than anything. And the second you let go of that is the second everything falls to shit, and that's the second our world stops being a free one, I think. But, see, I didn't want to get into all this heavy stuff, but it's not really, it's kind of unavoidable when you talk about things like this. I didn't realize that this play was going to be this controversial, by the way. I just kind of picked it at random. But I think it's good that it is, because it's very timely, It's very relevant, I'd say. People can't laugh at themselves nowadays. People condemn each other for nothing. People rely way too heavily upon ideology. And they can't just, they take themselves way too seriously. And you gotta lighten up. You gotta loosen up. Otherwise, things fall apart. You get this kind of cultural entropy that we're dealing with now, where everything's biased, where everything's, politicized right, left. And it's divided. I mean, what's been going on in the U.S. right now? I mean, at the time of recording this, they had that whole thing on the Capitol that I don't know too much about. But what I do know is that it's fucked up, and that it's a sign that the times are not all that great right now. We might have had it too easy for the past while or so, and it's made a lot of people complacent, made a lot of people ignorant, and unaware, and a bit too, kind of soft and useless. And if we're not too careful, I don't know. This is how fascism happens, man. This is how authoritarianism happens. The root issue at this is authoritarianism, by the way. You can have liberal authoritarianism, you can have conservative authoritarianism. It doesn't matter. The point is that you shouldn't have a society where people tell you what to do, where you can't make decisions for yourself. I mean, yeah, we all have responsibilities, right? Like, you have to go to work. You have to work. You have to go to work. You have to make a living. You have to pay your bills. You have to pay your taxes. Fine. That's, everyone has to do that to a certain extent, right? Everyone's in the same boat when it comes to that. At the same time, you shouldn't be told how to behave, I guess, necessarily. I mean, everyone's a different person at work than they are at home, but you should be able to have your own life. You should be able to have your own independent existence, I suppose, outside of the typical social obligations, right? You can be a blue collar worker. You can be an office cubicle worker by day, or however, for like 8. You can do the 9 to 5 and then go home and be yourself, and that's how it should be. That's the best possible system, I suppose. The one we've seen so far, anyway. I mean, you can argue with me on this. I don't really know too much about it. I could be completely ignorant on it, but that's how it seems to me. That's how it is. That's the best it's gonna get. Is there anything you want to add to that, Simone?
Yeah, I agree with you that we should have our own views on things, that we shouldn't depend on one ideology at all times. Just like you said, that there's no perfect concept about, for example, being left or right. I think you need to find perfect balance in your life, or the things that you should believe in.
And in the Philippines, would you say that you have the opportunities you need to be yourself, I guess, and to do what you really want to do with your life, I guess, career wise, I don't know, lifestyle? Just, do you think the Philippines has those opportunities for you? Do you think it has a good system?
It's a matter of finding or looking for your own opportunities, because opportunities doesn't lie in front of you here. You need to make way to look for opportunities for yourself or build yourself. Um, you need to make move or decide for yourself that it wasn't just like in the US that everything is in front of you. Tons of opportunities lying there. You need to make move, I guess, here, or else you're gonna be stuck for wherever you are.
Stuck wherever you are, huh? Yeah, yeah. I would agree with all of that for sure. Is there anything else you want to say? By the way, I mean, I feel like I've been taking up a lot of the airtime, so feel free to just comment anything you'd like right now. I'll give you space for it.
I don't know if I'm relating on the movie, but I guess that, I don't know. It's just a matter of finding balance. It's like here, we should be thinking more for ourselves, not just by. We should not be um, lack in or some the ideology, or lack in one perspective. We should explore things. For example, the education system here, it doesn't give you much time. It doesn't help you that much to improve yourself. But it's not it's spoon feeding at all. I never felt that there's spoon feeding. For example, in English, it wasn't that. It doesn't give me time to practice at our school. You need to make action by yourself. You need to decide on your own, or else that there's nothing would happen. There's make opportunities for yourself, I guess. So enjoy your enjoy your life the way you should.
Right. Basically, at the end of the day, people need to get their shit together. And at the end of the day, you. I mean, a lot of the time, people are the only thing that are holding themselves back. And anytime that isn't the case, then that's injustice. It is. Um, like the sexism of the ye olden days, I suppose. It's like women couldn't vote and stuff. And that was bad. That was injustice. That was unjust because the women could not fully be themselves, and it wasn't equal. And I get that why there's a lot of resentment and why there's a lot of bitterness and why there is this issue these days, people, this modern reevaluation of the past. But at the same time, I think it's kind of ridiculous. I think it's fucking stupid to make things now just as bad as they were back then for the opposite side, or whatever. I don't think that's very smart, And I think that's also, by the way, I think it's also a very privileged point of view. I think the people who argue this mostly are, they're very out of touch with reality, and maybe that's a straw man, on my part. But it's hard to take people seriously when they get mad about pronouns and and it's just the fucking stupidest bullshit. I can't even. There's so much of it. I can't even think of it off the top of my head. But just a lot of dumb shit. It's like, let's actually talk about it. Let's have an actual discourse here. And that's really the most important thing is that, how can you take someone seriously when they aren't even willing to sit down and discuss these issues with other people with opposing viewpoints, civilly. It's ridiculous. And, to be in that same vein to honor that, I guess, let's read a few more of these arguments and then we'll end the episode. But I want to give the other side of the perspective, the side in favor of seeing this play as sexist. I want to give them a chance. I want to give them I want to let their voices be heard. Because I'm going to be the. Maybe you'll see this as like, oh, I'm just trying to. I don't know, but I don't want to be like them. And whether you think that that desire is genuine or not, I don't know. I don't really care. But I'm going to read them because, I'm not going to censor anybody. Not that they need to be censored anyway. These are all academics, and they're in much higher. If you want to talk about power, they're in much higher positions of power than I am. I or Simone, I am, and likely ever will be. So, just keep that in mind. But I will read them if I can find them. I mean, this is a pretty dense article. I don't know how I feel about this episode. How do you feel about this episode, Simone? Do you think it was good, or do you think we kind of fucked it up a little?
I don't know. It's didn't match well on talking about the movie or the play. I think we deeper regarding some social issues, I guess, and I enjoy about it. I enjoy this episode.
Yeah, I thought it was a good one too. Maybe a little too whatever, but whatever. Let's read some more. Philippa Kelly makes the point that Petruchio's taming, quote unquote, of Kate, harsh though it may be, is a far cry from the fiercely repressive measures going on outside the theater, and presumably endorsed by much of its audience. Some critics argue that in mitigating the violence both of folktales and of actual practices, Shakespeare sets up Petruchio as a ruffian and a bully, but only as a disguise, and a disguise that implicitly criticizes the brutal arrogance of conventional male attitudes. Elizabeth Cantor argues the following: whatever the quote-unquote gender studies folks may think, Shakespeare isn't trying to quote-unquote domesticate women. He's not making any kind of case for how they ought to be treated or what sort of rights they ought to have. He's just noticing that what men and women are really like and creating fascinating and delightful drama out of it. Shakespeare's celebration of the limits that define us, of our natures and as men and women, upsets only those folks who find human nature itself upsetting. That is the opinion I agree with the most. Jonathan Miller, director of the 1980 BBC television Shakespeare adaptation and several theatrical productions, argues that although the play is not misogynistic, neither is it a feminist treatise. I think it's an irresponsible and silly thing to make that play into a feminist tract. to use it as a way of proving that women have been dishonored and hammered flat by men, male chauvinism. There's another more complex way of reading it than that, which sees it as being their particular view of how society ought to be organized in order to restore order in a fallen world. Now, we don't happen to think that we are inheritors of the sin of Adam, and that orderliness can only be preserved by deputing power to magistrates and sovereigns, fathers and husbands. But the fact that they did think like that is absolutely undeniable. So productions which really do try to deny that and try to hijack the work to make it address current problems about women's place in society become boring, thin, and tractarian. And yes, I would also agree with that. You got to take into consideration the times and, how different the world is. Every 100 years, the world becomes completely unrecognizable as it was 100 years before. And that's another thing. And it's not about making excuses. It's about showing things as they are, warts and all. It's about honesty. It's about authenticity. Because things like that, they can be good. It's like, I'm not trying to say that Shakespeare is Hitler or anything, but it's like if we just erased Hitler from history, what good would that do? We need to know that things like that happen because they do happen. It's just it's a fact of life, that there's evil in the world and that there's bias and prejudice and, people who want power and people who will do anything for that power. You need to know about these things. These are essential aspects of who we are as animals, because we're animals at the end of the day. You gotta remember that. You gotta take that into consideration with everything you do. And art is just a way, it helps us better appreciate life, better appreciate ourselves. It helps us look at ourselves, and even if something is, biased or prejudiced or whatever, those are just as helpful as the other things. They are, unfortunately. And that's the ugly truth about it. And that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to admit because it gets dicey. It doesn't necessarily mean you support those things, Charles Dickens, one of the greatest novelists of all time, in the history of literature, in the literary canon. He was a shitty husband and a shitty father, and this is the guy who wrote a Christmas Carol. Just, it's life, man. It's not, we're not trying to make excuses for it. It's just, it is what it is. And you take out of it what you will, and the hope is that you're productive with everything, You see something like that and you go, I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be shitty like that. You see something like, you see the characters in The Taming of the Shrew, the shitty ones, and you go, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be better, Or, that's definitely not how you should be. That is not. Or, and the opinion of the artist itself is always up for debate as well. It's complex. It's a complicated situation. That's why people discuss it. That's why people talk about this stuff still, If it were cut and dry, people wouldn't bother with it because the answer would be obvious. But it isn't. It isn't always obvious. Life is not always obvious. That's just what I think. But to end off, I'll read a few more if I can find them. I'll read a few more of the pro. This is sexist arguments. Let's see. In a Marxist reading of the play, Natasha Korda argues that although Petruchio is not characterized as a violent man, he still embodies 16th century notions regarding the subjugation and objectification of women. Shrew taming stories existed prior to Shakespeare's play, and in such stories, and by the way, the taming of the shrew is like the taming of the woman, basically. And whether that's meant to be taken as like a positive or a negative or a literal or a satire, satirical or whatever. That's what all this discussion is about. We obviously can't ask Shakespeare because he's dead, but I don't think he wrote about it. If he did, people would just agree on that, on whatever he had to say about it, but he must not have because, that's why we're talking about it. Shrew taming stories existed prior to Shakespeare's play, and in such stories, the object of the tale was simply to put the shrew to work, to restore her, frequently through some gruesome form of punishment, to her proper productive place within the household economy. Petruchio does not do this, but Korda argues that he still does work to curtail the activities of the woman. Kate is not a reluctant producer, but rather an avid and sophisticated consumer of market goods. Petruchio's taming strategy is accordingly aimed not at his wife's productive capacity. Not once does he ask Kate to brew, bake, wash, card, or spin, but at her consumption. He seeks to educate her in her role as a consumer. She believes that even though Petruchio does not use force to tame Katharina, his actions are still an endorsement of patriarchy. He makes her his property and tames her into accepting a patriarchal economic worldview. Vital in this reading is Katharina's final speech, which Corda argues inaugurates a new gendered division of labor, according to which husbands labor both by sea and land while their wives luxuriate at home. In erasing the status of housework as work, separate sphere ideology renders the housewife perpetually indebted to her husband. The Taming of the Shrew marks the emergence of the ideological separation of feminine and masculine spheres of labor. And I think there were plenty of people like that back in the day, and I think there are plenty of people like that now, with very old-fashioned views of gender like that, you know? There are plenty of people with that bias and that prejudice, but that's not everybody. It's definitely not everybody. And I think the problem with a lot of, Marxism, Marxism's wrong. I think it's wrong. And I'm biased against Marxism, and I'm making that apparent to you. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not biased against Marxism. I think it's fucking stupid. There you have it. I think it's fucking, I'm not going to say, it's fucking dumb, But I was going to say the R word, and that's a naughty, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it doesn't work. It's a dumb way of looking at things. It's too general. It's too theoretical, Anytime this shit has been put into practice, it's fucked everything up in a society, in a structure. So I don't know. I take those kinds of opinions with a grain of salt. But if you agree with them, you have every right to. Go for it. Embrace it. Just embrace whatever you believe in. Embrace it, and don't bring other people down. Don't tell people that they can't think that way. You can think that way if you want. You can be a Marxist all the live long day. But I'm not going to pretend like I like it, What do you think, Simone?
Yeah. Oh, it could be anybody, or we could believe what we wanted to believe, but we should be careful about what you're going to believe in, I guess.
Well, and I guess to close, the movie is, the movie Taming of the Shrew, which was first broadcast on November 21st, 2005. Adapted by Sally Wainwright, directed by David Richards. It is, it's, yeah, I mean, everyone is ridiculous in the movie, Catherine wants to get married for political reasons because she wants to become the leader of the opposition, which is some political title in the UK, the politician who leads the official opposition in the United Kingdom. She has to get married for PR reasons, and so the whole thing, it's a joke, it's a romantic farce, lighten the fuck up, people. And it's good, and it's good that it raises important questions, I guess. I mean, it's good that people talk about it. That's a testament to its strength, that means that people care, and people want to see good in the world or whatever, and people are willing to, to have these discourses on these things. Keep that up. That's how progress is made. That's how we realize our own follies, and that's how we modernize and advance and everything. But just make sure that you're doing it in a normal, healthy, natural direction. Don't make it a matter of just, this is my team. I want my team to win. That's not going to get you anywhere. You got to be balanced with this stuff. Anyway, so before we close out, I'm going to do a Would You Rather, because that's what I did the last 3 episodes, and we're just going to do it every time because it's kind of funny. I don't know, it's kind of fun. It's not necessarily funny, but it's fun. Let me find it real quick. Simone, I will give you the opportunity once more because I feel like I've been hogging this episode to say more things. Is there anything you'd like to comment on your own? If not, I'll ask you a question and then you can just give your answer for it.
I don't know. I think I learned that from what you say, and I couldn't argue with it. I agree with your opinions.
Do you think the movie's message is anti-feminist in the sense that it's saying that a woman cannot prioritize her career over marriage? That's what
I
it's
don't
saying.
think that. anti-feminist at all. It shows as I don't know. It doesn't appeal to me that it was anti-feminism at all.
No, I don't think
Was it?
so either because she still gets to keep her career at the end. Like she has her job. It's not she doesn't get to keep her career. She keeps her career because she's a normal working adult. She's a person. She has a job. It's just it's about the union. It's about bringing people together. It's not about anything else, man. That's how I think about it because it's just it's fucking stupid that people even argue that. But I can but to be fair, I can kind of see where they're coming from. But then again, it's selective truth is how I see it. It's picking the facts to fit a certain skewing of whatever, and I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with the forced perspective or whatever. The movie leaves it open ended. You could talk about it, I guess, but I don't think it really. I don't think it has anything to do with. I don't think it has enough to do with the patriarchy or whatever. To say that is just a gross oversimplification, I think. But anyway, I can't seem to find the question, so I'll just ask you another. I'll find a good. Let me find a good. Would you rather? So let me ask you another question about the movie. Do you know what a prenup is? A prenuptial agreement.
Yeah. What is?
A prenuptial agreement, in case no one else, other people don't know, it's essentially just an agreement made by a couple before they marry concerning the ownership of their respective assets. Should the marriage fail, it's basically a backup plan. Something to fall back on, a legal thing, written contract entered into by a couple prior to marriage or a civil union that enables them to select and control many of the legal rights they acquire upon marrying and what happens when their marriage eventually ends by death or divorce. Couples enter into a written prenuptial agreement to supersede many of the default marital laws that would otherwise apply in the event of divorce, such as the laws that govern the division of property, retirement benefits, savings, and the right to seek alimony, which is spousal support, which is basically just, you pay your X amount of money for, an X amount of time, with agreed upon terms that provide certainty and clarify their marital rights. This is all coming from Wikipedia, by the way. What I want to ask you, Simone, is I don't know. Do you think people should get prenuptial agreements? Like, what do you think that says? Do you think it's, I don't know, a sense like that those people don't trust each other? They don't trust their marriage to be strong. They don't actually love each other enough to be comfortable to, take the chance, take the risk? Or do you think it's a smart, just legal, financial, practical matter? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's mostly common on people with richer people or more wealth. Normal people, for example, like my brother, it wasn't common here to have some prenuptial agreements. It's I think it's good. It's being practical. But given here that there's no such thing as divorce, uh, it wasn't uh, an idea here. I think I haven't encountered any prenuptial agreement before.
Do you think it's strange that your country doesn't allow for divorce yet, in the legal
Yeah,
sense?
I think they really need to push divorce. I think I don't know, people remarries. There's only annulment, I guess.
And
Like
go
it's
ahead.
senseless anymore.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I think it's senseless anymore. It's senseless. I think
Oh,
that without divorce, um, people can get out of their marriage whenever they want. They want, I guess. I think they should make it more moral. Divorce will make it more moral or more, what, more linked to the law.
and why do you think that is? Why do you think legal or divorce is not a thing in the Philippines? Why is that the case? What happened to make it that way?
Maybe the Filipinos are still hold Um, the Catholic Church have still hold on this perspective. They have the more they hold a greater hope against these things.
Is that a?
And
Do you think that's a product of colonization?
yeah, I guess Filipinos are we've been captured by we've been colonized by the Spaniards for 336 years. So 333 years. So 333 or 300. I'm not sure about the date, but it's 330 plus. So I think it really has the great impact on the lives of every Filipinos. The more the values and beliefs.
Yeah. See, people. Americans aren't the only pieces of shit. We all are. That's how countries are made, unfortunately, for better or worse. Usually for worse. Uh, but but anyway, um, does that bother you still to know that like your country is a product of colonization? Like, does it bother you and other people? Like, do you guys not like Spanish culture or anything like that? Like, is that still a thing in 2021?
No, it's never been a thing to resent our colonized. For example, the American and the Japanese. I don't know. I didn't feel that people here hates any culture at all. And Filipino are welcoming. We have the most reason to resent certain population or countries because we've been colonized for I think from this before the civilization start. So I don't know. It's not a problem at all. It happens in the past, and it's just stay in the past. I guess we need to move on.
Yeah, if anything, I think you guys should mostly be, resentful of the good old Red Star state, good old People's Republic, if you know what I'm saying. Am I right in saying that or wrong? Is that how it is over there? You guys.
I don't know. It never been teach to us that we should hate our colonizer at all. It's just they're telling what happened in the past, and it's never an issue to in the education system itself. It doesn't tells us to hate these people because it's already in the past, or we should accept what's happened in the past. For it essential to who we are today or what the Philippines is now.
So you would agree that it's more colonization in the Philippines is more a historical fact than a modern reality.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
And well, we can't be in this. We can't be the Philippines that now, or can be the Filipinos who we are now if the if colonization doesn't exist. I think we still be a tribal. We should be tribal, I guess.
So it's allowed you to be more multicultural and not all just one thing, all uniform under one banner, just very homogenized, I guess. And so, well, from the impression I get from you when you say that is that you guys have chosen the path of acceptance over bitterness and resentment. You've moved on. You're happier for it. You're your own people now. You're the better person at the end of the day. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, like it is the best thing that we did. That this country accepted all the things that happened in the past.
Yeah, make peace with it, right?
Yeah,
That's good. That's good. It's productive. See, now that's why you guys are fun. But anyway, I'm gonna close off with this. Would you rather? It's a pretty tough one, but I think it's relevant to this whole thing because we're talking about careers and love and whatever. What you should prioritize your relationship or your job. All this. So answer me this, Simone. Would you rather be homeless but have close family and friends, or live in luxury but be all alone?
I'd rather be homeless than to live in luxury at all. Um, for in reality, I never been live a luxurious life or have tons of opportunity for me, or so I'm prepared for whatever it is for to be homeless. I think.
Because you're used to well, I don't want to like, I don't know, like you're used to not being like a millionaire, basically, like most of us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you wouldn't miss it.
Uh
You wouldn't miss it because you never knew what it was like anyway. You know, it's like we don't. Very few people in this world know what it's like to. Well, I mean, I guess a fair amount, but the majority of people in this world do not know what it's like to eat caviar atop the Eiffel Tower with some countess or something. You know, so if you never had that as part of your frame of reference, you wouldn't miss it. So it wouldn't be a big deal anyway. You know, right?
yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's just the- being rich, I think, or being living a luxurious life is just another perspective on take on life. I think it's just a choice.
Yeah. Well, and then I would go with be homeless but have close family and friends because of a loophole. I found a loophole in the question because if you're homeless and you have family and friends, like just stay at their houses. You know what I mean? Then you're not homeless anymore. You know, so there you go. That's what I would do. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, I mean, right? Like that's the solution, isn't it? There's a loophole. Like that, I figured it out. I figured it out.
the problem of the solution itself. It isn't what the question itself.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I beat the system, and that's our review of the 2006 2005. Jesus Christ, I can't. 2005. Okay, 2005. I was 5 years old. Adaptate when it first came out. Adaptation, BBC adaptation, British Broadcasting Company adaptation, part of of the Taming of the Shrew, which is a Shakespeare play that has a lot of controversy surrounding it. And yeah, I thought it was all right. You know, it's not my favorite Shakespeare story anyway, and it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite movie either. The movie was all right, you know. But yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I really have to say. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe for more content. We upload new videos every week. And yeah, stay tuned for more episodes. I run a solo series on this channel called Coffee with Holden, and Simone over here runs a solo series called Tea with Simone, where we do mostly reviews, you know, mostly movie and TV shows, but also sometimes book reviews, maybe even music reviews eventually. We also have plans to start producing audiobooks for the channel and to have debates. I don't know what that's going to look like just yet, but it's in the future, so stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a nice rest of your day, and peace.